Have you been estranged from a family member, or are you contemplating cutting ties with someone you love? If so, stay tuned. I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manly, a clinical psychologist, and I'd love to discuss this really important topic of estrangement and the impact of estranging from loved ones. Note, please, that when I'm talking about estrangement and the idea of disconnecting, there is a caveat. We want to exclude relationships where there is active abuse. If someone is actively abusing a family member or other loved one, then it is wise to estrange in many cases and to get immediate support in all cases. So remember, anything that I'm talking about does not apply to active abuse. So that sets the stage. Now, let's move on to another really important piece. In my work as a clinical psychologist, I take a very no shame, no blame approach. That doesn't mean that we let other people harm us, but it does mean that we don't blame ourselves for things we didn't know how to do differently. And instead, we accrue the skills that we want and need in order to do better in the future. And this applies to people on the other side of the equation, that it's no use getting stuck in shame and blame. Instead, I really advocate putting that energy into growing and learning so that your relationship with yourself and with other people can improve in the short term and long term. So let's get started on estrangement and why it seems to be on the rise. First, research shows that about 1 in 10 people are estranged from a family member or loved one in the US. And about 1 in 4 people have been estranged by a family member or a close relative at some point in their lifetime. So those are big statistics and ones that we really want to pay attention to. So why is family estrangement on the rise? There isn't just one answer to this really important question. There are a host of issues that can work together and individually to cause estrangement. First, we live in a society that tends to be oriented toward disposing of whatever is unwanted or inconvenient. We do this with products, and we sometimes, unfortunately, do this with people. Second, we have intergenerational living that is not as common as it used to be. There was a time in the not so distant past where moms and dads and their adult children and the grandparents lived in the same home. This created a type of social cohesion and social insurance and a very collectivistic attitude where people learned to live with each other. They learned to really tolerate. And now that we are more individualistic and people are moving from one side of the country to the other with ease or around the world, there isn't that need, sometimes unfortunately, to really maintain that sense of needing and wanting to be with each other. Now, there is a sense of ideological conformity that is working against us in society. And what I mean by this is when there are political and social norms and expectations that say it should be this way or it should be that way, right there we begin to become divided, even within our own intimate relationships. If somebody doesn't agree with what we believe to be the societal norm or expectation, rather than talking through it or working through it or accepting it as it is, we can have a tendency to cut people off. That's not necessarily healthy at all, and we'll get to that. Now, another piece. Our society is geared toward quick fixes. We want a quick fix to lose weight. We want a quick fix to relieve our anxiety or depression. We want a quick fix for whatever ails us. And relationships don't have quick fixes. So what some people resort to is what they deem an appropriate quick fix of cutting off a loved one. And in my opinion, this is not a quick fix. As I said earlier, this abuse is exempted from this, but cutting off someone because something's going wrong in the relationship, not an appropriate solution. My opinion, not a true solution at all. It's literally cutting someone off that prevents the growth and the connection that really our relationships need. Now to the next piece. Many people have a reduced tolerance for discomfort and for doing the work that is necessary to create healthy, lasting relationships. I firmly believe that all relationships take work, just like anything in life that is valuable take work. We really want to see that relationships, romantic ones, family ones, friendships, they all take work. And if we love someone, just like we love our work, our career, our exercise, whatever it is that we're really invested in life, our hobbies, if we value our relationships, then we want to work on them, just like we work on other things. But many people have this idea in their minds, and it's not a correct assumption that relationships shouldn't take work. Full stop, that's not accurate. So let's move to the next piece. What we're talking about here with the idea of not having to work on relationships feeds the mindset of if it's not working for me, I'm going to cut it out of my life. Well, that really prevents us from having these long lasting relationships like family relationships that really deserve our effort. And again, when we cut something off, or a person off, we are really preventing ourselves and that person who's been cut off from feeling loved, connected, and valuable. I'm not sure that that's a wise thing to do to anybody, again, unless there's active abuse. Another piece is that many parents today were raised in a different generation, whether it was the 50s, 60s, or 70s. And the way they were raised may be very different from what someone who was raised in the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s may be experiencing. The level of availability of resources, the tropes that were really rampant in that period, whatever it might have been, the societal norms were very different. And although they may not be appropriate today, they were the norm then. This is not an excuse. What I'm saying is that it's context. And a lot of people don't want to hear context. And when we don't have context, we are robbing ourselves and the other person of their lived experience of what might have been going on in their life. For example, this is a simple one. I've heard people cutting off a parent because the parent was too busy when they were growing up and they didn't feel heard or seen. This is a really important issue, and it's one that can be healed. Cutting off the parent isn't going to help that. What might help it is hearing what the context was in the parent's life. Were they working two jobs because they had to feed the children? Were they not there in the evening because they were trying to take care of their elderly parents? Whatever it might have been, there is likely some context in there that can help the other person understand why the situation unfolded as it is. Again, it's not an excuse, it's context. And let's move to the next piece because we'll come back to background information in just a little bit. Another piece that's really important is society tends to devalue older adults in a way that wasn't historically done. In the past, older adults were valued. They stayed at home in these intergenerational families I've talked about. But now, once children are grown and out of the house and are done with college, they think, why do I need my elders? Why do I need my parents, my grandparents? It's not that important anymore. It's all about me right now. Now, when we have that attitude, we're taking away part of our history, part of our own DNA. And even if we were adopted, these were people who invested in us and parents who invested in their children. So whether it's a child who is grown who wants to estrange, or a parent who is done with the child and wants to estrange, remember this intergenerational piece is a really important factor that we want to keep alive because it's part of the richness of our history. Let's move to the next piece, projection. I see this a lot in estrangement, where a parent or an adult child is dealing with so much, and instead of seeking individual therapy, they project the issues onto those that are close to them. They fault the other person. They don't do the inner work because it's uncomfortable or hard or expensive. And instead, they cut them off. Is that going to be helpful in the short term or long term? Well, in the moment, it may feel good to have the power to cut someone off. In the long term, it's so destructive because A, the person who's projecting isn't doing their work, and the person who is projected upon, who is basically the movie screen for the other person's issues, is being harmed for something that they're not responsible for and they can't fix because it's a projection. And the person who is projecting, when they don't get to the roots of the problem, those issues are still going to be there, even after the estrangement. Let's look at another piece. Untrained social media influencers. There are many people out there who are more interested in getting a social media following and loads of likes than they are in how they are ultimately affecting other people's lives. So when there is an untrained pseudo therapist offering advice about how important it is to estrange from a parent or for a parent to estrange from an adult child, really listen to yourself about why you're seeking advice from somebody who's not trained. This takes us to the next piece. There are apparently some trained professionals out there, even psychologists, I've been told, who are offering advice about estranging and telling people that they should estrange from a parent or diagnosing a parent or diagnosing an adult child without having seen that person in, whether by a video call, in-person group therapy, some sort of setting. And this is frankly unprofessional. Before anyone recommends estrangement, they ought to give the family or the individuals in the sphere the courtesy of doing a true assessment, which means assessing each person and assessing the interactions. And then, and only then, unless abuse is occurring, can a true recommendation be made. Otherwise, when we show up in a therapy room with our issues, it's from our own perspective. The other person in the relationship isn't there to give their perspective. So a therapist who is going to recommend something as serious as estrangement without having done this full circle view is not doing anyone any favors, including their professional reputation. So let's move on to the next piece. When we sum this up, we want to really be careful before estranging from a family member, friend, close relative. Why? Because estrangement causes irrevocable damage to the self, to the other person, and to the relationship. And even if the relationship is repaired later, and it takes years, by the way, to restore the trust that was once there, the relationship is never the same. Those years, months, days where the relationship was fractured, they can't be replenished, they can't be restored, they can't be redone. So even if a repair is made, that harm caused to the other person's mental health, physical health, emotional health, it's all there. And we want to think twice to really slow it down. And so again, before you consider estranging from a friend or family member, seek wise counsel. Attend a relationship therapy. It's worth the investment. And then make your decision wisely. Be sure to explain to the other person why you feel compelled to do what you are doing. And then proceed in all ways with love, doing something that you would want someone else to do to you. So, if you'd like to learn more about what you can do following a rupture, following an estrangement, stay tuned for the next part of this two-part series. I welcome your comments. I also invite you to visit my website at drcarlamanly.com, where you'll find some free resources. And as always, I wish you and yours the very best in your journey. And this is Dr. Carla Marie Manly, here to help you be the very best you can be.